Welcome to today's Explainer. You know, the race for the ocean floor has literally reached a breaking point. As we dive deeper into 2026, the new blue economy framework is forcing massive mining giants to either adapt or face total shutdown. So the big question is, can we actually harvest polymetallic nodules without destroying our absolute last frontier? It's time to figure out how to bridge that gap between extraction and survival. Today, we're framing the intense collision between the skyrocketing global demand for green tech minerals and the massive incoming wave of strict global ocean governance. To really grasp the gravity of this global dilemma, listen to this high-stakes provocation from a recent UN policy brief. They stated, "In the face of the triple planetary crises of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution, avoiding the risks of deep seabed mining is both urgent and necessary." Wow! I mean, we are looking at a scenario where our desperate pursuit of critical minerals for the energy transition is clashing directly with preserving the planet's largest and arguably most fragile ecosystem.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our strategic briefing for navigating all of this. First, we'll hit the blue economy breaking point, then defining high-stakes resource extraction. After that, the precautionary principle mandate, followed by tech-centric environmental compliance. And finally, we'll wrap up with the future operational roadmap.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the blue economy breaking point, or as I like to think of it, extraction versus extinction.
So the world is rapidly transitioning to renewable energy, right? And that requires absolutely massive amounts of critical minerals, things like cobalt, copper, nickel, and manganese for EV batteries and wind turbines. But here's the catch. Terrestrial or land-based mining is facing a massive crisis. We're talking declining ores, huge supply bottlenecks, and some pretty heavy social costs. Naturally, nations are turning their eyes to the ocean, but this creates a razor-thin policy dilemma. On one hand, the opportunities are staggering. We're talking about a resource supply that completely dwarfs land-based reserves. Plus, we avoid land use conflicts and human displacement, not to mention the massive economic gains. But on the flip side, the risks are severe. There's potential for irreversible damage to unstudied deep-sea species, impacts on indigenous coastal cultures, and completely uncertain liability laws if major environmental damage actually happens.
And honestly, this is what is actually at stake. Deep-sea octopuses, just like this little guy, live right on the sea floor at over 2,500 meters down in the Clarion-Clipperton Zone. That's this vast stretch in the Pacific Ocean that happens to hold more cobalt, nickel, and manganese than literally all known land-based reserves combined. But these incredibly fragile habitats take centuries to regenerate. So any disturbance down there could be entirely permanent.
Moving on to Section 2, defining high-stakes resource extraction. We're talking heavy engineering at 6,000 meters deep.
To truly grasp the regulatory nightmare here, we have to understand the sheer mechanical reality of extracting these minerals thousands of meters underwater. It is a mind-blowing feat of heavy engineering. It basically breaks down into 3 steps. Step 1, a massive seabed harvester. Think of it as a gigantic tractor-like crawler scrapes and crushes the polymetallic nodules that are just sitting loose on the abyssal plains. Step 2, a vertical riser piping system acts like a giant straw, pumping the slurry, which is this messy mix of water, rock, and silt, all the way up to the surface. And finally, Step 3, a surface production vessel separates the valuable ore and just dumps the leftover wastewater and silt right back into the sea. The physical disruption caused by these massive crawlers dragging across pristine ecosystems is, well, it's pretty staggering.
30. That is the exact number of active exploration contracts currently in force globally. The International Seabed Authority, or ISA for short, has issued these contracts, mostly in that Clarion-Clipperton zone we talked about. But here is the massive catch. They actually haven't adopted a final, formal exploitation code yet. So there's a very real ticking clock right now as 30 heavily funded exploration groups wait for the official rules of the game to be finalized so they can legally kick off commercial extraction.
Which brings us to Section 3, the precautionary principle mandate. This is the ultimate legal and ecological roadblock.
So this is the severe legal roadblock that's currently halting the mining giants under international law. The core mandate from the UN basically boils down to a very simple equation. Severe or irreversible damages plus scientific uncertainty equals taking measures. What does that mean? It means calling for a moratorium, hitting the pause button, or just simply taking more time. Basically, when the science is uncertain and the risks to the marine environment are that severe, action just absolutely has to be paused. The absolutely crucial thing to understand here is the precautionary principle. In international law, this is a state obligation to adopt adequate measures to prevent environmental risks, even if we don't have full scientific certainty yet.
And let me tell you, the scientific unknowns right now are immense. For example, recent research just discovered that these polymetallic nodules naturally produce something called dark oxygen. Basically, oxygen created in complete darkness without any plants, which actually supports deep-sea life. It's wild. Because of incredible, game-changing unknowns like this, at least 32 states are currently demanding an official pause or moratorium.
And one of the absolute biggest uncertainties revolves around underwater plume generation. These mining operations generate two types of plumes. First, you have benthic plumes. These are massive, thick clouds of sediment kicked up by those harvesters crawling across the seabed. Second, you have midwater plumes, which are created when those surface vessels pump all that wastewater and fine silt back into the water column. These muddy plumes can literally travel across thousands of kilometers. They threaten to smother filter-feeding animals and could severely disrupt the ocean's critical ability to sink and store our global carbon emissions. Not good.
All right, Section 4, Tech-Centric Environmental Compliance. We're looking at the digital backbone.
Listen, digital reporting and real-time spatial monitoring, they are no longer optional. They are the absolute backbone of legal deep-sea operations. We are breaking down exactly how to align extraction protocols with the strictest international compliance mandates ever seen. To track those dangerous sediment plumes we just discussed, oceanographers are deploying highly advanced fluid mechanics. Compliance means using multi-scale fluid modeling, running in-situ field experiments, and carefully monitoring collector vehicle maneuvers. You know, you can't just run a numerical model on a laptop in an office. You have to constantly ground truth these complex mathematical models with real, raw field data gathered directly from the extraction sites to accurately predict where that sediment will drift. This is exactly how operators can secure their viability while maintaining a totally bulletproof environmental defense strategy.
But this brings up a really fascinating critical question. How do we measure what we can barely even see? The ISA requires strict baseline environmental data to ensure biodiversity isn't just being wiped out, but identifying microscopic or totally unstudied organisms at 6,000 meters deep in pitch-black darkness, yeah, that is an absolutely immense operational hurdle.
So, the technological solution to this is twofold. On one side, we have the ISA Deep Data Database. Think of this as a massive, centralized geospatial system where contractors are legally required to submit all of their environmental reporting and metadata. On the flip side, to actually gather that data in the first place, operators are turning to AI image assessments. We're talking high-speed, non-invasive 3D image processing that allows automated vehicles hovering just inches above the seafloor to capture and identify benthic life at a pace human eyes couldn't even dream of matching. This sophisticated digital backbone is exactly how you establish a legally compliant ecological baseline.
And that brings us to our final section, Section 5, the Future Operational Roadmap and Aligning with the Blue Economy.
Deep-sea mining is undergoing a really radical transformation under these latest global regulations. Navigating these super stringent environmental thresholds requires a highly sophisticated blend of cutting-edge technology and smart legal strategy to mitigate ecological risk. So, we are exploring the essential roadmap for aligning subsea projects with the future of a sustainable blue economy. A prime case study for this is actually India's Deep Ocean mission. India has successfully secured exploration rights for 75,000 square kilometers in the central Indian Ocean basin. Right now, they're deploying a manned submersible, the Matsya 6000, which is custom-built to dive to those extreme depths just for mineral research. India's whole approach perfectly represents that vital, tricky balance between the strategic national need for resource independence and the incredibly strict ecosystem sustainability demanded by international law.
Which leaves us with this final, incredibly powerful question. Can we actually harvest the ocean floor without completely destroying our last frontier? Look, the demand for green energy, it's definitely not slowing down anytime soon. But neither is the global mandate to protect our deep seas. The actual rules of the blue economy are literally being written right now as we speak, and finding that balance between critical extraction and global extinction is going to define the entire next decade of this industry. Thank you so much for joining us on this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and we'll see you next time.